Before I was a philosopher, I was a hardcore drug addict, and eventually led to a stroke, and I am now paralyzed on my left side. And honestly, I wish I would have watched this TED Talk about a decade ago, and maybe I could have saved my old life. First time watching it, let's get into it. Apparently, what we think about addiction is totally wrong. First off, philosophy is a confession. Philosophy is a confession. Don't love somebody that you don't like. Alright, everything you know about addiction is wrong. Johann Hari, TED Talks 10 years ago. Let's get it.
One of my earliest memories is of trying to wake up one of my relatives and not being able to. And I was just a little kid, so I didn't really understand why. But as I got older, I realized we had drug addiction in my family, including later cocaine addiction. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, partly because it's now exactly 100 years since drugs were first banned in the United States and Britain, and we then imposed that on the rest of the world. It's a century since we made this really fateful decision to take addicts and punish them and make them suffer because we believed that would deter them. It would give them an incentive to stop.
That is correct. I've been to county jail a few times because of my addiction issues, and I can say that probably 99.9% of people that are incarcerated in county jail and like prisons, it has to do with drugs or alcohol of some sort, whether it's trying to get them or doing something stupid while you're on them or whatever. But yes, we have definitely punished addicts, and it is detrimental to our health, guys. I have been preaching moderation over abstinence. It's key, but what do I know? Shut up, Wes. Let's get it.
And a few years ago, I was looking at some of the addicts in my life who I love and trying to figure out if there was some way to help them. And I realized there were loads of incredibly basic questions I just didn't know the answer to. Like, what really causes addiction? Why do we carry on with this approach that doesn't seem to be working? And is there a better way out there that we could try instead? So I read loads of stuff about it, and I couldn't really find the answers I was looking for. So I thought, okay, I'll go and sit with different people around the world who've lived this and studied this and talk to them and see if I can learn from them. And I didn't realize I would end up going over 30,000 miles at the start, but I ended up going and meeting loads of different people, from a transgender crack dealer in Brownsville, Brooklyn, to a scientist who spends a lot of time feeding hallucinogens to mongooses to see if they like them. It turns out they do, but only in very specific circumstances. To the only country that's ever decriminalized all drugs, from cannabis to crack, Portugal. And the thing I realized that really blew my mind is almost everything we think
I hear Portugal is actually doing very well with the legalization of all drugs. I think it's having a good impact on their drug usage in that country. I think I could be wrong. Hopefully we'll get into that more on this.
We know about addiction is wrong. And if we start to absorb the new evidence about addiction, I think we're going to have to change a lot more than our drug policies. But let's start with what we think we know, what I thought I know, right? Let's think about this middle row here, right? Imagine all of you for 20 days now went off and used heroin 3 times a day. Some of you look a little bit more enthusiastic than others at this prospect. Don't worry, it's just a thought experiment. Imagine you did that, right?
That was my drug of choice, not specifically heroin, but opiates. And I think probably half of the country in the United States has gone down that road as well. How do y'all like that withdrawal symptoms? That lower back, restless leg. Oh yeah, yummy. I want to do it right now.
Right? What would happen? Now, we have a story about what would happen that we've been told for a century. We think because there are chemical hooks in heroin, as you took it for a while, your body would become dependent on those hooks, you'd start to physically need them, and at the end of those 20 days, you'd all be heroin addicts, right? That's what I thought. First thing that alerted me to the fact something not right with this story is when it was explained to me, if I step out of this TED Talk today and I get hit by a car and I break my hip, I'll be taken to hospital and I'll be given loads of diamorphine. Diamorphine is heroin. It's actually much better heroin than you're ever going to buy on the streets because the stuff you buy from a drug dealer is contaminated. Actually, very little of it is heroin. Whereas contaminated.
I love going to the hospital and telling them that the morphine doesn't work and they get you some Dilaudid or some fentanyl, but Dilaudid's way better. One time I had a doctor describe it to me as the Corvette of pain meds. Dilaudid. If you go to the hospital, tell them the morphine doesn't work, and they'll give you a step up, and it's worth it. I obviously still have drug problems, but I don't. I'm not an active user.
The stuff you get from the doctor is medically pure. And you'll be given it for quite a long period of time. There are loads of people in this room.
It's the exact same every time. And it was pretty hardcore in the 90s, guys. There used to be like dirty doctors where you could go and just pay them like $100 and they'd write you a script for whatever the hell you wanted. And they were everywhere here in Texas, especially Houston area. Okay.
But realize that you've taken quite a lot of heroin, right? And anyone watching this anywhere in the world, this is happening. And if what we believe about addiction is right, those people are exposed to all those chemical hooks. What should happen? They should become addicts. This has been studied really carefully. It doesn't happen. You will have noticed if your grandmother had a hip replacement, she didn't come out as a junkie. And when I learned this, it just seemed so weird to me, so contrary to everything I'd been told, everything I thought I knew.
I think it has more to do with you're trying to, it's like a medicine. You're trying to cure some kind of a trauma that you've had in your life, I believe. It's a medication. Well, obviously it's a medication, but it's a coping mechanism to deal with trauma is what I feel like addiction is at the end of the day. I do feel like you can be predisposed. Both of my parents had addiction problems. They enabled the shit out of me, which I think is the biggest probably negative that you could do is enable your children. I love my parents to death, but they both enabled the shit out of me.
I just thought it couldn't be right until I went and met a man called Bruce Alexander, who's a professor of psychology in Vancouver, who carried out an incredible experiment that I think really helps us to understand this issue. Professor Alexander explained to me, the idea of addiction we've all got in our heads, that story, comes partly from a series of experiments that were done earlier in the 20th century. They're really simple experiments. You can do them tonight when you go home if you feel a little bit sadistic. You get a rat and you put it in a cage and you give it 2 water bottles. One is just water and the other is water laced
with everything. Why do we still go by shit that was done so long ago? You know, a lot of the shit was written next to a fire because electricity wasn't written yet and they were writing it with a feather. Think about that.
With either heroin or cocaine. If you do that, the rat will almost always prefer the drugged water and almost always kill itself quite quickly. So there you go, right? That's how we think it works. In the 70s,
Damn.
So there you go, right? That's...
Woo! How's that for self-control? Imagine just doing it until your death right off the bat. That's wild. Life is crazy, guys. Let's hear what happens with these rats.
Professor Alexander comes along and he looks at this experiment and he noticed something. He said, we're putting the rat in an empty cage. It's got nothing to do except use these drugs. Let's try something a bit different. So Professor Alexander built a cage that he called Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats, right? They've got loads of cheese, they've got loads of colored balls, they've got loads of tunnels. Crucially, they've got loads of friends, they can have loads of sex. And they've got both the water bottles, the normal water and the drugged water. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, they don't like the drugged water. They almost never use it. None of them ever use it compulsively.
Damn, y'all. How about that? Idle time, idle hands, idle time. It's bad for you. And it travels. Don't try to run from your addiction because you'll just find it wherever you go. Trust me.
None of them ever overdose. You go from almost 100% overdose when they're isolated.
That's fucking wild, guys. Wild as hell. That's a very valuable experiment, and this information should be widespread, guys. You can beat your addiction. Everything is a cycle if you allow it. So if you're not putting active pressure, an object will stay in motion until a force is active up against it. That's the same thing metaphysically. And so if you're not actively pushing against your addiction problems, it will cycle back. It's the default setting here in this weird simulation we live in.
To 0% overdose when they have happy and connected lives. Now, when he first saw this, Professor Alexander thought, maybe this is just a thing about rats. They're quite different to us, maybe not as different as we'd like, but, But fortunately, there was a human experiment into the exact same principle happening at the exact same time. It was called the Vietnam War. In Vietnam, 20% of all American troops were using loads of heroin. And if you look at the news reports from the time, they were really worried because they thought, my God, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war ends. It made total sense. Now, those soldiers who were using loads of heroin were followed home. The Archives of General Psychiatry did a really detailed study, and what happened to them? It turns out they didn't go to rehab. They didn't go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped. Now, if you believe the story about chemical hooks, that makes absolutely no sense. But Professor Alexander began to think there might be a different story about addiction. He said, what if addiction isn't about your chemical hooks? What if addiction is about your cage? What if addiction is an adaptation to your environment? Looking at this, there was another professor called Peter Cohen in the Netherlands who said, maybe we shouldn't even call it addiction. Maybe we should call it bonding. Human beings have a natural and innate need to bond. And when we're happy and healthy, we'll bond and connect with each other. But if you can't do that because you're traumatized or isolated or beaten down...
I enjoy bonding, but I also enjoy my solitude. And at this point in my life, I would prefer the solitude. Most people retire from work. I have retired from fun. I had way too much the first half of my life. So now I just learn for fun. And I've been doing it for a decade probably, ever since my stroke. I was forced to get comfortable in my own head real quick, and I had to.
You will bond with something that will give you some sense of relief. Now, that might be gambling, that might be pornography, that might be cocaine, that might be cannabis. But you will bond and connect with something because that's our nature. That's what we want as human beings. And I think, at first I found this quite a difficult thing to get my head around, but one way that helped me to think about it is, and I can see, I've got over by my seat there a bottle of water, right? I'm looking at lots of you and lots of you.
That reminds me, one time I went to a social detox. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Normally, when you go to like a detox or drug rehab program, there's medical staff on hand, and they generally give you shit to treat your symptoms or whatnot. But one time I went to a social detox in Kansas, and there was no medical staff. You're just in there with a bunch of with people withdrawing, and you just kind of bond, and it was weird. Go for the medical detox, guys. Don't go to one of those dumb shits. It was terrible.
You have bottles of water with you, right? Forget drugs, forget the drug war. Totally legally, all of those bottles of water could be bottles of vodka, right? We could all be getting drunk, I might after this. But we're not, right? Now, because you've been able to afford the approximately a gazillion...
Thanks. I never, ever drink. If I have any pain management whatsoever, it's cannabis. People don't kill for pot, okay? Like Joe Rogan said, the only way pot's going to kill you is if like 50 pounds of it drops out of an airplane and hits you in the head. Other than that, you're good to go. And honestly, it's the best way to fight opiate addiction, in my opinion. Now, you can't get lazy with it. If you're going to be lazy, you can't go that route. But if you have some self-control and some impulse control, it can definitely work for you, and you should consider it because it's definitely works very well. Very, very well.
Pounds that it costs to get into a TED Talk. I'm guessing you guys could afford to be drinking vodka for the next 6 months. You wouldn't end up homeless. You're not going to do that. And the reason you're not going to do that is not because anyone's stopping you. It's because you've got bonds and connections that you want to be present for. You've got work you love. You've got people you love. You've got healthy relationships. And a core part of addiction, I came to think, and I believe the evidence suggests, is about not being able to bear to be present in your life. Now, this has really significant implications. The most obvious implications are for the war on drugs, right?
Yeah, being comfortable in your own head, what I was just talking about. It's hard to do, guys. Hard to do. I used to never like being by myself. And before my dad passed away, he would always be like, I love being by myself. Why can't you be by yourself ever? And I just hadn't gotten comfortable in my own head yet. It took till the stroke, guys. So 35 years it took for me to get comfortable in my own head. And I think that was a big issue with my addiction, although I know there was a bigger problem in my childhood. It's another time for another day.
In Arizona, I went out with a group of women who were made to wear T-shirts saying I was a drug addict and go out on chain gangs and dig graves while members of the public could jeer at them. And when those women get out of prison, they're going to have criminal records that mean they'll never work in the legal economy again. Now, that's a very extreme example, obviously, in the case of the chain gang, but actually almost everywhere in the world we treat addicts to some degree like that. We punish them, we shame them, we give them criminal records, we put barriers between them reconnecting. There was a doctor in Canada, Dr. Gabor Mate, an amazing man, who said to me, if you wanted to design a system that would make
So it ends up being like a dog chasing his tail.
Addiction worse, you would design that system. Now, there's a place that decided to do the exact opposite, and I went there to see how it worked. In the year 2000, Portugal had one of the worst drug problems in Europe. 1% of the population was addicted to heroin, which is kind of mind-blowing. And every year, they tried the American way more and more. They punished people and stigmatized them and shamed them more. And every year, the problem got worse. And one day, the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition got together and basically said, look, we can't go on with a country where we're having ever more people becoming heroin addicts. Let's set up a panel of scientists and doctors to figure out what would genuinely solve the problem. And they set up a panel led by an amazing man called Dr. João Goulão to look at all this new evidence. And they came back and they said, decriminalize all drugs, from cannabis to crack. But, and this is the crucial next step, take all the money we used to spend on cutting addicts off, on disconnecting them, and spend it instead on reconnecting them with the society. And that's not, essentially, that's not really what we think of. What they did wasn't really what...
Damn, that prime minister or president was smart as shit. Always go to science, guys. The same result has to be proven by 100 different scientists for it to become fact. That's pretty solid evidence. The scientific method is solid, guys. Please believe in it.
What we think of as drug treatment in the United States and Britain. So they do residential rehab, they do psychological therapy that does have some value. But the biggest thing they did was the complete opposite of what we do. A massive program of job creation for addicts and microloans for addicts to set up small businesses. So say you used to be a mechanic. When you're ready, they go to a garage and they'll say, if you employ this guy for a year, we'll pay half his wages. The goal...
That is badass, guys. Shout out to Portugal. If anybody is from there, drop a comment. Let me know where you're at in Portugal and how you're doing with your addiction issues and how everybody around you is doing with their addiction issues, your loved ones. Is everybody doing okay over there? Sounds like it was a solid choice. Hopefully other countries start to take notice.
Was to make sure that every addict in Portugal had something to get out of bed for in the morning. And when I went and met the addicts in Portugal, it's fascinating. What they said is, as they rediscovered purpose, They read it.
That's so badass, guys. That is a great way for taxpayer dollars to be spent, in my opinion. Stop locking people up. Over here, it's big business. There's private prisons that are full to the fucking max. Especially here in Texas. There shouldn't be private prisons, y'all.
Fascinating. Discovered bonds and relationships with the wider society. It'll be 15 years this year since that experiment began, and the results are in. Injecting drug use is down in Portugal, according to the British Journal of Criminology, by 50%, 50%. Overdose is massively down. HIV is massively down among addicts.
Shout out Portugal. That's how you do it.
Addiction in every study is significantly down. One of the ways you know it's worked so well is that almost nobody in Portugal wants to go back to the old system. Now, that's the kind of political implications. I actually think there's a layer of implications to all this research below that. You know, we live in a culture where people feel really increasingly vulnerable to all sorts of addictions, whether it's to their smartphones or to shopping or to eating. You know, before these talks began, you guys know this, that we were told we weren't allowed to have our smartphones on. And I have to say, a lot of you looked an awful lot like addicts who were being told their dealer was going to be unavailable for the next couple of hours. And, you know, a lot of us feel like that. And it might sound weird to say, oh, you know, I've been talking about how disconnection is a major driver of addiction. But weird to say it's growing because you think,
yeah,
well,
how does that feel? All you non-drug addicted people, you are addicted to some shit. So pay attention, guys, even if you're not addicted to drugs. Other shit is just as detrimental to your health. Maybe even more so.
The most connected society there's ever been, surely. But I increasingly began to think that the connections we have, we think we have, are like a kind of parody of human connection. If you have a crisis in your life, you'll notice something. It won't be your Twitter followers who come to sit with you. It won't be your Facebook friends who help you turn it round. It'll be your flesh and blood friends who you have deep and nuanced and textured face-to-face relationships with. And I think there's a study I learned about from Bill McKibben, the environmental writer, I think relationships with.
I don't have any of those right now. I haven't really left my house since the pandemic, guys. Just for doctor's appointments and shit. But other than that, I enjoy my solitude. Let's just say that. I was way too social the first half of my life, so I have to catch up on like the financial, working side. I got a lot of work to do. I'm running out of time to be becoming a millionaire. It's gonna happen somehow, and I know it's not coming from this. This is just for fun. This is just to get a stream of income coming in because I'm unemployable.
And tells us a lot about this. It looked at the number of close friends the average American believes they can call on in a crisis. That number has been declining steadily since the 1950s. The amount of floor space an individual has in their home has been steadily increasing. And I think that's like a metaphor for the choice.
Like everybody I do know from my past, though, would be there for them if they needed me, if I needed them to be. I have multiple friends that I could call right now that would be like that. So that's good. I just haven't talked to them in forever. What's up, guys? Probably ain't watching this because the people closest to you never support you. Because low-key, the higher you get, the worse it makes them look. So that's why the closest people to you don't support you. Low-key, you're making them look bad.
We've made as a culture, right? We've traded floor space for friends. We've traded stuff for connections. And the result is that we are one of the loneliest societies there has ever been. And yet, Bruce Alexander, the guy who did the Rat Park experiment, says, we talk all the time in addiction about individual recovery. And it's right to talk about that. But we need to talk much more about social recovery. Something's gone wrong with us, not just as individuals, but as a group. And we've created a society where, for a lot of us, life looks a whole lot more like that isolated cage and a whole lot less like Rat Park. But if I'm honest, this isn't why I went into it, right? I didn't go in to discover the political stuff, the social stuff. I wanted to know how to help the people I love. And when I came back from this long journey and I'd learned all this, I looked at the addicts in my life, and if you're really candid, it's hard loving an addict, and there's going to be lots of people who know in this room you're angry a lot of the time. And I think one of the reasons why this debate is so charged is because it runs
when you go to rehab, detox, a lot of times they don't want you to talk to your family or anything because not only do you need a break, they need a break as well. So they usually try to, at least for the most part, not a lot of phone time because of that reason. They need more of a break than we do. We are unbelievably hard to deal with. Manipulation tactics, hardcore. I mean, that's a big part of being a drug addict. If you want to be a successful one.
So charged to the heart of each of us, right? Everyone has a bit of them that looks at an addict and thinks, I wish someone would just stop you. And the kind of script we're told for how to deal with the addicts in our life is typified by, I think, by the reality show Intervention. If you guys haven't seen it, I think everything in our lives is typified by reality TV, but that's another TED Talk. If you've never seen the show Intervention, it's a pretty simple premise. You get an addict, all the people in their life, gather them together and say, if you don't shape up, confront them with what they're doing, and they say, if you don't shape up, we're going to cut you off, right? So what they do is they take the connection to the addict and they threaten it. They make it contingent on the addict behaving the way they want. And I began to think...
Yeah, I mean, you're isolating. That's the worst thing for an addict is idle time, idle hands, idle time. Stop cutting them off, guys. Let's love our addicted friends and family. They need you big time. Just be careful for the manipulation tactics. Because I screamed I was sober the most when I wasn't sober. I mean, I would go to like AA meetings high as a fucking kite. I would snort pills in the bathroom at like a reunion at the detox. Shout out to... And
to see why that approach doesn't work. And I began to think that almost that's like the importing of the logic of the drug war into our private lives. So I was thinking, well, how can I be Portuguese, right? And what I try to do now, and I can't tell you I do it consistently, and I can't tell you it's easy, is to say to the addicts in my life that I want to deepen the connection with them, to say to them, I love you, whether you're using or you're not, is to say to the addicts in my...
Portuguese is basically Spanish, correct? I'm pretty sure it's in a weird spot, like on the coast, like kind of landlocked by Spain on one end and ocean locked on the other, I think. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I need the engagement anyways, so.
I love you, whatever state you're in. And if you need me, I'll come and sit with you because I love you and I don't want you to be alone or to feel alone. And I think the core of that message, you love you and I don't want you to be alone or to feel alone.
Anybody watching this that has addiction problems, if you need somebody, if you follow me on social media, you can drop me a DM. I will respond if you need somebody to talk to. I promise you I will respond. Any platform that I'm on. Well, I don't really get on X much, but I think I would still get the notification. So send me a message, mainly on Facebook, guys. Just DM me. I will be there for you, I promise.
Not alone, we love you, has to be at every level of how we respond to addicts, socially, politically, and individually. For 100 years now, we've been singing war songs about addicts. I think all along we should have been singing love songs to them because the opposite of addiction is not sobriety.
Yeah, over here we had the so-called war on drugs, and it seems like the drugs won that war.
The opposite of addiction is connection. Thank you.
Ooh, damn, guys, that was beautiful. Poetically beautiful. Sorry for screaming in your ear. Let's finish. This is about over. Very good, Johann Hari. Thank you very much. That was beautiful. Beautifully poetic at the end for sure. Everything, I'm just going to do the conclusion right now. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, I can't express my gratitude enough. Improve your lives. Improve your rat life. Your rat park, sorry. Don't have idle time, idle hands. Connection. And like I was just saying, I will be there for you. Especially if you're in my life, like where we know each other in real life. Absolutely 100% hit me up. I will be your sponsor. Happily. Alright, thank you guys one more time. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are enjoying these TED Talk episodes. I'm going to keep doing them. Mainly for my U.S. audience. I'm trying to trying to build the U.S. side a little bit more. But shout out to all my India folks. I do love you guys too. This is for you if you're interested. Hopefully you are. If not, I need some more recommendations from you guys on what you would like for me to react to, Indian wise. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you need help with addiction. I'm probably going to put some info for help in the description, so there should be a hotline number on there, and I will probably leave a link to AA meetings or something as well. So check out everything in the description. If you can support the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. I am unemployable. This is the only chance I get at bringing in an income. If you can't support financially, you can definitely hit that like button and subscribe. And if you do, make sure you hit the bell so you can stay in the loop and never miss a drop. Alright guys, go love somebody that you don't like so you can love yourself properly. I love you. Addiction is a bitch. Go love somebody that you don't like and seek out a connection, because that is the opposite of addiction. Love you guys. See you next time.